The earliest recollection I have of wanting to join the military was around the time I was 14 years old. An older cousin of mine had a book. It was black. It had 3 letters on it which said SAS. I opened that book and saw what I thought were cool pictures of people in various military type clothing and in different scenes. Some in camouflage in the jungle, some in black kit with gas masks, some in what looked like desert landscapes, some soldiers in the mountains, in helicopters and boats in the water hanging from ropes, and more. These images captured my imagination at a young age. I never spent much time reading the paragraphs or pages associated with the book, as the pictures told me everything I needed to hear. From that point on, I had made up my mind that I was going to join the army and join the SAS, or the Special Air Service, oblivious to what it would take physically, mentally, and emotionally. Prior to that, I was like most other young boys, hanging out and playing with my friends, enjoying sports, bunking school, which basically means skipping or wagging school. It was a lot easier for me to do that due to my mum leaving for work early and usually not being home until after school was finished. Sorry, Mum. I was blessed with really good friends in high school. We were probably all a bit mischief in our own way, but overall these young men were awesome friends to me and forever hold a place in my heart. Shout out Chad Rose, Luke McGee, Hugh Stewart, Dale Haley, Billy Maxwell, Adam Niwa, Benos, sorry brother, I forgot your surname, Lehigh Harris, Shannon Carpenter, Tim Beattie, and Dion Walker. Dion was a great part of the basketball team, but outside of the b-ball courts, he had his own crew of friends, which he hung out with most of the time. The time came for me to submit my application to the New Zealand Defence Force, in particular the Army. I wanted to go to infantry because it seemed like infantry would help prepare me for the SAS better than anything else in the Army, which is what I thought. And still to this day, I think that's still the case. My mum, however, wanted me to get a trade and join engineers, because from her perspective, she was looking at me being able to have a career post my time in the Army, and she felt that if I had a trade, that would provide me with some job security going forward. But I wasn't interested in a trade or the engineers, and quite frankly, I wasn't smart enough to do something like that anyway. Well, that's what I thought, and to be fair, probably was the actual case at that stage of my life at that time. I remember the recruit sergeant asking me what I wanted to do in the Army. Without hesitation, I naively said, I want to join the SAS. He laughed, likely because he could see that I had no idea how hard that would be, and maybe because all he saw was a skinny kid from Kaiti, Gisborne. He asked me if I knew what that would mean, and I said to him, no, I don't. Heck, he may have even been laughing, thinking that I was just a dreamer. If that's what he saw and thought, he's right. I was a dreamer. I still am. But I was determined to make that specific dream a reality. Him laughing at me did cause me to be much more cautious about what I said going forward when it came to service in the military, but it also provided a solid personal reference point for added drive when things got hard on selection. At some point during my recruitment discussion, the topic about needing to have school certificate, commonly referred to during my time in high school as School C. I was made aware that I would need to have School C before I could join the Army. I was gutted because I had failed School C in my 5th form year, which was the year we sat School C. That meant I would need to repeat my 5th form year whilst in 6th form. Although gutted and embarrassed at having to redo my 5th form year to try and pass School C while in 6th form, I did it. And lo and behold, I just scraped through with a C pass, scoring low to mid-50s out of 100 on my subjects. I was over the moon because I didn't want to have to try again whilst in 7th form, which was at the time the final year of high school for my vintage. I didn't realise this then, but years later, this situation and many others highlighted for me that if I want something bad enough, I'm more than capable of doing it, if I'm prepared to put in the work. Testing time came and went for the Army. I let the recruiter know that I want to join infantry, but my mum wants me to get a trade and join the engineers. I sat the aptitude test and failed the requirements to be an engineer miserably, but I was still stoked because the recruiter let me know that I was still good to go for infantry, which was what I wanted anyway. Mum wasn't happy. She thought I must have failed the test intentionally, but honestly, Mum, no, I didn't. I just wasn't smart enough. I left for basic training from the bus depot in Gisborne around July or August 1996 on a fine sunny day, dressed in black basketball shorts. I think they were Orlando Magic shorts at the time, a plain white t-shirt and black sandals. My mum and older cousin, well, my older cousin really, she was more like my older sister, Maxine, saw me off. Eventually arriving in Waiuru military camp for the commencement of my 12-week basic training as part of Basic All-Arms Course 295. Although I found it challenging from the perspective of it putting me well outside my comfort zone, I loved it. I was part of 5 Platoon Bravo Company, Second Lieutenant Dempsey was our platoon commander from memory. Sergeant Gray, a female from the Logistics Corps, I believe, was our platoon sergeant. And we had Corporal Tamohi, who was infantry, Corporal Coulter, an engineer, and Bombardier Garton, who was artillery, as the section commanders for the 3 sections within 5 platoon. Later, we also had Corporal Pohatu as well, who came in nearing the end of my basic training from memory. 12 weeks of basic training seemed like a blur. There were some cool memories and things that I recall. During our basic training, we experienced a short 2 to 5 minute helicopter ride in a Huey. I don't think that was common during that time. I had a small little Kodak wind-up camera where I took photos of. Those photos are long gone now, though. I don't know where they are. I did have the film printed, but the film and the photos for those are gone. I made some friends in 6 platoon as well. So even though I was in 5 platoon and had friends in there, made some friends in 6 platoon, and we would sneak junk food treats back for each other from time to time if either of our platoons were allowed to the dry canteen. Members of my section as well as myself had secret stashes of junk food in our bed space area for late night snacks after lights out, and I don't recall myself or anybody in my section ever getting caught with our treats, so that was a bonus. Waiuru was the first time I experienced snow, and when we signed out the Steyr rifle and I looked down the scope of the whopping 1.5 times magnification lens, I thought to myself I'd be able to hit anything. I was wrong. Basic training came and went. I was fortunate to be awarded the top recruit award for my platoon. Our platoon was the right of line platoon after ending up with the most points accumulated over the course of the 12 weeks. Being right of line was made to be a big deal, so every platoon worked hard in their efforts to try and win that position. My mum hitchhiked from Auckland to Waiuru to be there for my march out parade, while my Uncle Joe, my mum's big brother, who she named me after, along with his family, I think his family came, also travelled through. Apparently my uncle told my mum off for hitchhiking to Waiuru, and I think he organised for my mum to get transport back to Auckland. Either he did, or I may have been able to give some money to my mum so that she could get transport back or a bus back to Auckland. Either way, she arrived back to Auckland safely. After our march out parade, there was no leave. Those of us who had chosen infantry were then sent down to the South Island for infantry corps training in the Christchurch area, spending our initial 5 to 7 weeks thereabouts, or more, in a place called West Mountain. All up, our corps training was 14 weeks from memory. Again, that went by quick. We did have approximately 2 weeks off over the Christmas and New Year's period before heading back to Christchurch to finish off the rest of our infantry corps training. Infantry corps training was also challenging and awesome at the same time. Different NCOs, different environments, different locations, the dreaded tekapo, or tekapo as it was referred to, and the need to dig in during that final exercise. I recall we had unimogs pulling boulders out of our firing positions, out of our gun pits and our sleeping bays when we were digging in Tekapo. That place is much like Waiuru. It's probably the Waiuru of the South Island. It is a miserable place to go and train. But it's excellent for building soldiers capable and resilient enough to push on during hard times. That's my take anyway. That time down there was spent with more focus on developing our basic knowledge and skills and competence in soldiering tactics and strategy. Lots of PT and being hammered with diamond push-ups daily for any indiscretions by a Corporal Kiriopa. He loved handing out diamond push-ups to us when we messed up. One in, all in was well and truly in effect, and it was awesome. The one and all in, for those that may not be familiar with or may not understand what that means, basically, if one person is late, everybody is late, so everybody gets punished. So therefore, one in, all in. March out time came for corps training, and those of us who chose 1st Battalion, 1st Royal New Zealand Infantry Regiment, or 1RNZIR, would be posted to Linton Military Camp in Palmerston North. I didn't receive any awards for corps training. I was just happy to graduate. I think my corps training cohort marched out in Linton instead of marching out in Christchurch. So because we were already there in Linton, we stayed, and those who wanted to be based in Christchurch moved back down south. Around February, March 1997, after our march out parade, I was posted to 5 Platoon Victor Company 1RNZIR as a 19-year-old. In or around June or July 1998, I met my now wife, Helen. Her maiden name was Tuiali'i. She was a private in the army and worked in 10 Transport as an administrator. She was 2 basics after mine. She was on basic 297, and her job and her role within as an administrator for 10 Transport was later consolidated within Linton Camp anyway during that time, as they amalgamated all the admin corps together into one central building, which we referred to as the LAC, or the Linton Admin Centre. I knew I was going on selection at the end of that same year, and I had let her know several weeks into our dating that I would be going on selection. She had no idea what that meant, other than if successful, I would be in Auckland and she would still be in Palmerston North. We both agreed that's okay. We can stay together until I go to Auckland and then we'll finish. Neither of us were thinking long-term relationship at that stage. However, time went by. If I wasn't training or if I wasn't out in the field on exercise, I was with her. Hanging out, getting Chinese takeaway from Mr. JJ's, a local Chinese takeaway store in the housing area at the time, which apparently is still operating and running to this day. On weekends, I would often eat with her at the mess, and during that time, a few weeks before selection was to kick off, I found my feelings for her growing stronger. They had definitely grown stronger. And our feelings, thankfully for me, she felt the same. So we had decided that if I was successful in passing selection and ending up being posted in Auckland, that we would do the long distance relationship thing. So we committed to that. With my mind still focused on the SAS, and now with a level of reassurance that Helen's feelings for me were as real and as strong as mine were for her, I went on selection with an added drive and determination fueled by my love for Helen. My experience with regards to being in a relationship prior to selection was one that added more fuel to the fire for me. It made me more driven. For some people that I've spoken to over the years, being in a relationship prior to going on selection, they shared that it was a significant reason why they quit during selection. They missed their spouse. Some had children as well, which added more conflict for them. And while on selection, they could no longer see themselves serving in a role that would demand so much of their time and focus. I respect them for their decision and reasons. But to anyone wondering if it's something a person who is in a relationship or marriage or who has children should do, my answer, based on my personal experience, is 100% yes. It can absolutely be done. My observation and experience is that a spouse or partner or family will either drive you towards being successful or will pull you away. Neither one is wrong. To be honest, I never saw myself being married or having children, but life had other plans. When people ask me if it's better to be single if looking to join the SAS, I instinctively say yes, because the job demands a lot from the individual who volunteers to serve there. And it can be extremely hard on relationships, marriages, and children. I've found it takes a special partner who chooses to support their spouse who has volunteered to serve in the Special Air Service. But each to their own at the end of the day. If you fall in love like I did, you can either run with it and stay the course, use it to drive you, or you can plot a new course, both of which are fine to do. Around October, November 1998, that same year where I met my now wife, I was on the New Zealand SA selection course as a 20-year-old who was in his first serious relationship ever, but I was unfazed. If anything, I was more focused and determined. Yes, I was nervous. Yes, I was young and immature. I felt out of my depth in regards to soldiering. I felt like I lacked vital soldiering skills required to serve as an SAS soldier. But I simply knew without a doubt that this was what I wanted to do, and I was going to continue until I made it. I also thought that if I could show them that I could pass selection, that they might see that I could be taught the necessary skills required to eventually become an operator within the SAS. The NZSA selection course was the hardest thing I'd ever done in my life up until that point. And although I was young, naive and immature, somehow I understood that having a strong and unrelenting mindset and being a good team player before arriving for selection was going to be critical to my chances of success, regardless of how fit, fast or strong I thought I was physically. Before I went on selection, I felt like the only ways in which I was coming off selection was if I broke something and couldn't continue, if I was removed by the directing staff, or if I died. That probably sounds pretty dramatic, but that's how important this was to me. I never saw any scenario in my mind prior to or during selection where I thought to myself, I might quit here or at this stage. I never thought about trying to get to a certain stage of selection and then seeing how I felt. I don't even recall a time where I thought about quitting because I was hurting so much. I was purely focused on finishing selection and finishing as well as I could. It was amazing to me to reflect on the blessings of how hard my mum was on me and the way she pushed me growing up. It didn't make selection easy or easier, not at all, but she demanded that I learn how to work, that I understood the value of hard work, and she set the example for me through her actions. I didn't always live up to the example that she set. I made some mistakes along the way, but her example has always stayed front of mind for me. Whilst doing that and more, she instilled within me an unwavering belief in myself, that I could and was capable of doing and enduring hard things. And for that, I'm forever grateful to my mum. Helen, my now wife, although my girlfriend at the time, she also played a pleasant distraction during my time on the New Zealand SAS selection. Although I knew she would never be there, I would imagine that I would be seeing her at the next checkpoint, so the incentive to get to the next checkpoint became more meaningful to me. No, she was never there, so why torture myself like that? The truth is, I didn't see it as torture. She helped with my drive and commitment to see the tasks through, even though she never knew it. And for that, I'm forever grateful to her as well. There was a phrase Helen shared with me prior to New Zealand selection, which she may or may not remember, which has always stayed with me. It read, "The obstacle in front of you is never as great as the power behind you." I'm just going to repeat that again. It's a phrase that has always stayed with me, as I mentioned, and really gave me a huge boost and lift before I even got to the start line of selection. Again, my now wife, she was my girlfriend at the time, shared this with me as her way of encouraging me and helping me stay strong during selection. And it read, "The obstacle in front of you is never as great as the power behind you." I took those words and did my best to apply them in my mind and translate that power into action to enable me to continue. Every time I felt physical pain through the work being done, or received a new grid reference for a new checkpoint, or the hunger pains or the sleep deprivation, or I had to endure another minute or hour of the dunes, known as exercise von Tempsky, or I was driven back 2 to 3 kilometers during the close country navigation for getting caught, or had to go a little further to complete the 60-kilometer pack march as the final phase or final task and activity for the selection, I imagined the power being a mother who believed in me, at the time a girlfriend who cared about me, my army brothers and some leaders back at battalion who wanted me to succeed. I thought of the early starts, late finishes, and extra PT that no one saw. I thought about being laughed at by the recruit sergeant, the physical and mental strain of getting up and going again and again and again, and my own personal fear of not being good enough and of not completing selection, and therefore letting my battalion down, letting my platoon down, letting my section down, and letting my friends and my leaders down. All of those things and more drove me to keep going, along with the understanding that I haven't broken anything, I haven't been removed by the directing staff, and I'm not dead, so keep moving. Yes, all of that was a great driver for me personally, but in addition to that was the realization and understanding which came to me during selection that what I was actually volunteering for was to serve others. When that happened, it was no longer simply the power behind me driving me through, over, under, and or around those obstacles, but it became something more meaningful. Each checkpoint met started to feel more like a mission accomplished that could potentially help others. These are the scenarios that I imagined in my head anyway. Every moment endured in the dunes was another step closer to delivering a successful resupply to soldiers or people that I had imagined whom we were trying to help. Being driven back 2 to 3 kilometers because I got caught was an opportunity to try and be better. And going a little further than I thought I could felt like I was helping not only myself, but others to see that they could endure and were capable of going a little further themselves, even when they're tired and sore, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And that if I could do it, then others who are willing to serve in a similar capacity can do it also. The final phase of the New Zealand SAS selection was the 60-kilometre pack march. We left approximately 3 to 5 minutes apart from memory, and we left slowest to quickest at the time. So what that means is those or whoever came in last from the close country navigation phase left first, and those who came in first during the close country phase left last. From memory, I left third to last on the final day, filled with energy and excitement, largely because I believe I came in and finished the close country navigation third, so hence my comment about slowest to quickest. Just 60 kilometres to complete, and with about 20 hours from memory to complete it. I felt confident and ready that I could complete selection. And to myself, I thought, nothing's going to stop me now, not unless I have a tragic accident and break something. Each person took their turn stepping off. my turn came up. I felt so good, I felt like I was cruising. I eventually passed everyone that had left before me, and for a long period of time I was out in front. At one stage I was so far in front I stopped to look back behind me on a long straight stretch of gravel road that must have been a few hundred metres, and I couldn't see anyone. I started thinking to myself, this is awesome. I also thought it would be cool if I finished first. Spoiler alert, I didn't. Leaving third to last means that there were 9 others that left before me. And so we ended up with 12 of us finishing and completing the selection course itself. The hours and kilometres went by and the sun was well and truly set, and it's dark out. The 60-kilometre pack march continues for those weary ones who remain on the selection course. A little ambient light from the few stars in the sky, and an understanding that every step brings me closer to the finish point. At this stage, I've been passed by the 2 men who started the 60-kilometre stomp after me, so now I'm third, and I'm annoyed about it. To add insult to my ego, my feet are swollen and are so painful that if I sit down to have a rest, the blood rushes away from my feet and I feel an intense, sharp, stabbing pain in my feet. So I choose to not sit down when I feel like a break. Instead, I stay on my feet to keep the blood there, and I hunch myself over so my back is like a tabletop to allow my pack to sit on my back and take the weight off my shoulders. I pause for a few moments each time, resting in this position, then stepping off again. The reason for doing that is because for me, the pain of sitting down and feeling that rush of pain in my feet, and then getting back to my feet and having the blood rush back into them with the same intense pain was terrible. And I just didn't want to have to go through that. So I tried to avoid it as well as I could. The time went on. There seemed to be no end in sight, but I was sure that the end couldn't have been too far away. And then as I came around a corner and take a small rise, I see what I thought was merely the next water stop and the directing staff at the check-in. There was a small fire going at the checkpoint. I thought that was just for the directing staff's benefit. I moved to the directing staff to check in, and before I can say anything, he extends his arm and hand to me, offering a handshake, and with a small smile on his face says, "Well done on completing selection." I reach for his hand thinking, is he tricking me? I grab his hand and shake his hand and simply say, "Thank you, staff." I'm still not 100% convinced that he's not lying to me. He then gives me some instructions and allows me to sit and rest and get a brew on or put on a hot drink. A massive sense of relief and happiness in that moment flows through every part of my body. And as I go to sit down, I don't feel any pain in my feet, just quiet, personal satisfaction that I made it to the end. The other guys who finished ahead of me were also there, in and around the Unimog, or the truck that was there. And it was just awesome to see them. The fact that I didn't finish first and feeling annoyed about that had left me, I was just over the moon to have completed selection. So with that being said, I actually ended up finishing 4th out of the 12 of us who completed selection that year. And I think my time for completion was around 13 to 14 hours. The other guys who completed before me must have been probably maybe 12 to 13 hours, or maybe they were still within that 13 to 14 hours, but maybe they were closer to 13 hours. From memory, I think those who finished before me, and I'll mention their names here, were Captain John McNutt, rest in peace. I think he passed away as a major, but captain at the time during my selection, and during my selection anyway, he was a captain, so John McNutt. Sergeant Kane Middleton, he's out now. He's out of the regiment and runs a small business with his motorbikes. And Private at the time, Aaron Pohatu. You see his big smile on his face on the 1998 selection when he marches into the CO's office and is told that he has been accepted for further training, and he starts to smile. And then the CO says, "Yes, you can smile." And then his smile lights up even more. And then there was me. So I think those were the 3 that were in front of me by the time I got to the end. I don't know when the rest of the guys came in though. With the NZSA selection complete, I now have a new point of reference of what I can endure physically, mentally, and emotionally. For me, completing selection was the second best feeling in the world. The first was my now wife asking to speak with me while we were out at a club called Park at the Bar in Palmerston North, and then proceeding to tell me that she liked me. To which I responded, "I like you too." Oh, isn't that sweet? Anyway, we head back to camp, get our timings for the next day to be at the compound, deservice, get cleaned up, and get some sleep. The next day, the vast majority of us limp up to the compound in our best dress as we wait to find out whether or not we have been selected for further training on the cycle or not. A barbecue was put on for us, but by this stage my stomach had shrunk significantly, and I don't remember feeling that hungry or eating that much because of the pain I felt in my feet. At this stage, I'm hopeful of being selected, but personally, I'm not too fussed either way because I know if I'm not, I'm going to reapply and come back and do it again. And because I know I've done it once, I know I can do it again. One by one, each of us goes into the room where the commanding officer is, as well as a few others, and we each receive the news. As I went in, I had already prepared myself to be told no. So when I was told that I had been accepted for further training and that I would be on the cycle the following year, I was shocked, jumping for joy inside whilst trying to not show the internal emotions I was feeling on the outside, in case the CO changed his mind. Even though that news was awesome, it didn't eclipse my now wife's words of, "I like you." But it was pretty close. We returned to our parent units. I went back to 1R and ZIR along with a bunch of others who had also successfully completed selection from 1R and ZIR, feeling proud that I'd represented my unit, my friends, and those leaders who wanted me to succeed. All of them were as expected. They were happy for me. I spent several days back and forth from the regimental aid post, or the RAP as it was called at battalion, getting my feet checked and then being allowed some time to heal up and recover by my platoon leaders, which I was grateful for. It was nearing the end of the year by that stage, so there wasn't much happening apart from preparing to go on Christmas leave. Before I went on leave, I moved all my things to Helen's room, as she lived in the female barracks in Linton on the 3rd floor. She literally only had the standard issue items in her room, apart from her own pillow and duvet. So essentially all she had in her room was her single bed and a closet and drawers that came with her room and her clothes and uniforms. While in the army, Helen left her card with her parents so they could take out and use whatever money they wanted from her account when she'd get paid fortnightly through the army. That to me was just one of the amazing things about her. She has always respected her parents and tried to make sure that they are always provided for, even if it meant that she went without. She was content and she had what she needed while in the army, and she knew that her parents were okay. By the time we left for Christmas holidays, I'd moved my fridge freezer, my Kenwood stereo system, TV, microwave, some pot plants, and I think that was about it, into her room. Needless to say, her friends were shocked when they visited her room and saw all this stuff in there. I couldn't have it in my room up in Auckland due to only being on cycle, and the fact that the cycle was an 8 to 10 month process of course and constant assessment with no guarantee of succeeding, it made sense that I left my stuff there back in Linton in case I was deemed to not be ready to serve in the unit and I was RTU'd, or otherwise what's known as return to unit, for not meeting the standard. So now basically my room, whilst on cycle, was the way Helen's used to be. But that was all good, as I would be living a simple life while on cycle as I continued in my efforts to join the New Zealand SAS, where it would be constant courses, constant assessment, and constant stress and pressure to perform well during the cycle and beyond. And that experience will be shared in another upload in due course. If you stuck around this long and listened to me take a trip down memory lane and share a few memories and experiences, thank you very much. If you connected with a part of this experience in your own way, awesome. If you didn't connect with it but stuck around anyway, thank you again. And if you didn't like it, oh well, too bad. To those struggling at this time, the message is always the same, eh? Keep turning up, keep staying in the fight, put one foot in front of the other, and just take one day at a time. Be kinder to yourself. Know and trust that things can do and will get better if you want them to, and if you're willing to endure these lonely and seemingly miserable times. I promise you the sun will shine again. There are better days ahead, and those better days are closer than you think. There is a light at the end of that seemingly long, dark, lonely, and miserable tunnel. So just keep going. As always, go always a little further. Remember, who dares wins and who cares wins. And until the next upload, there's a big mana wave coming from me to you, filled with my aroha, respect, appreciation, and gratitude for you all.